Are you dancing, guys? I'm dancing.
Yes, obviously.
Always.
Hey, guys. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of That GD Show, which stands for Genevieve and Dave, or That Goddamn
Nothing
Show.
else. Nothing else.
Literally.
Welcome, Shannon Q, the one and only. Hey,
Hi.
we're so happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we, Shannon, you and I, earlier this week, I sent, getting a thumbnail made for the show, and I asked you for some, we were talking about what to title it. And I said, Shannon, give me something clickbaity. What did you come back with, Shannon?
Something about why does Dave suck so much? Why is Dave Warnock such a dickhead?
Why is Dave such a tool? With the exact words.
That sounds right.
And I sent back and I said, no, I think something like, why does everyone hate Shannon Q would be more appropriate.
And I said the list is too long. The show's not long enough to cover it.
There's Greg Markowski with the super chat. Thank you, Greg. Dave with Forrest, Dave with Shannon, Dave with Genevieve. Dave only hangs out with really smart people. You're right. And the reason for that is, Greg, because I'm not so smart. And I've learned that if I hang out with smart people, it makes me seem smarter. So I'm not stupid in that regard. Yeah, I was on with Forrest yesterday on the Atheist Experience. We had a good time.
I love him.
I went all mad on somebody. But thank you for tuning in, everyone. This is a call-in show, so we'd love to hear from you tonight. Genevieve, how can folks call us?
You can call us at 217-375-9933. Our lines are open. You should definitely call.
Call and talk to the intimate Shannon Q. And we would love to talk to you. Any questions, any comments, just bring them. We'd love to chat with you if you want to call. We will try to get to your chats your comments in the chat room if we see them. But like and subscribe if you haven't already. If some of you folks are coming over to find us from Shannon's channel, you'll find that we're a much better channel, and you're going to want to subscribe. You're going to want to subscribe.
That's fair. That is fair.
You're going to want to subscribe and like.
Everyone could do better.
Shannon, you and I had a chance to meet just a little over a month ago at the Better Conference, and I was so looking forward to that. I tell you, I was looking forward to the conference, but getting to meet you, we've been friends for a couple of years now, and we live a long way away. You're way up in Canada, and I'm in the South, and it's just like, when are we ever going to meet? And so it was really, God just worked it out and brought us together.
No. You're the reason I was at that conference, because you're kind of a jackass. And you messaged me and asked me if I was going to go. And I was like, I don't know if I can work it in. And you, being you, were like, Shannon, this might be your only chance to meet me. I was like, why do you do
Shannon, I'm dying.
Yes,
I'm dying.
Exactly.
I'm dying here. Come on.
Bitch.
Do you even
we
care?
made it happen. We made it happen. So.
I will play that ALS card every time.
Yeah, 100% of the time. 100% of the time. So you were the reason I was there. I'm glad for it. Not because I got to meet you, but I got to see other people who I.
It was great. We got to, after the pandemic, it's just been, people have been hungry to get together and be in person. And it's just so valuable when we do, man. We hung out. You spoke, Paul spoke, I spoke, Seth, so many good speakers. Yeah, and then just the time to hang out in between, that was some of the best time, just out on the patio in the evening and just chatting. That's just so special. Sorry, Genevieve. Genevieve's going, God
damn. I know.
Next one.
I always mess out.
I'm sorry, Genevieve. It sounded like we're rubbing it in. I mean, kind of were a little bit, but no. But by the way, we've got most weeks we do a trivia question from the book that Shannon hadn't read yet. And even though I gave her one at the Better
I
Conference,
bought it. Thank you.
I correct myself. Yeah, you did buy it. But she hasn't read it yet because she really doesn't care much about me.
That's valid. I don't.
So,
I don't care.
but the trivia question tonight is this. And so, as you know, you win the GD Show coffee mug. Do you have one of those, Ethan, to show that beautiful coffee mug that we can put up? I didn't warn him much here on this. There it is. That GD Show. That's a logo by my good friend Gabe, who made that. So the trivia question, if you get the question right, and a couple of disclaimers, if you've won one before, you're disqualified.
Okay.
And if you live out of the
country,
Canada, actually, no, Canada is okay. Out of the North America, because they won't ship. They'll ship to Canada, but not to like UK, or I think someone in Australia won one, and I said, sorry, I'll send you a sticker or something. But so here's the trivia question tonight. It's really an easy one.
Okay.
All right, and it's an open book test. So if you guys have your books, if you don't have a book, then this is motivation to get a book. What was the make and model and color of my first car?
That's an easy. Can I give a page?
The make and model and color of my first car. The first one to get the answer right in the chat.
Oh,
wait, does a private chat in the show count?
Oh,
for you, Genevieve, yes.
Okay, great.
Because I've got one.
Make, model, and
make,
color.
model, and color of my first car. And everybody's going to the very front of the book.
Yeah.
Come on, people. I know you've got this. I know you've got this.
Well, I know it was tiny and fast and oozing with sex appeal.
Tiny and fast. Someone's got the color.
Just talking about you.
Tiny and fast and oozing with that does describe me.
Yeah.
Tiny and fast and oozing with sex appeal. I think that's the best description ever given of Dave Warnock.
I'm reading everything.
First car, a rust-colored junker. Nope, bad guess. Green Ford Pinto. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so glad it wasn't that. These people are just throwing out
speed reading my face off right now.
These people are just throwing out guesses.
What?
57 Chevy.
No, that was my brother's car.
Damn it. It was lime green. Fuck.
Hit, guys. It's in the book.
1968 Fiat Spider.
Yes. Red. What? Oh.
I beat you, Shannon.
Red. 1968 Fiat Spider.
Sorry, Shannon. I beat you by 5 seconds.
It was a garish red. Oh my God.
I hate losing. I hate losing
do.
so much.
Look, these 64 Dodge Dart Blue, they're just throwing out guesses. What the hell, people?
I do love the way that you describe this car. It really is beautiful.
It does make you can visualize it, can't you?
Yeah.
And it was the coolest car on campus. I'm not lying. I drove it back from Washington, D.C. This is a whole story in and of itself. A 17-year-old kid driving across country in a car he just bought that ended up breaking down every other day afterwards, and spending the night on the road by myself. But it was the coolest car on the campus. Everybody was wanting to ride in it and had a good time with that. Had some fun dates in that car, by the way.
It's funny. So, not to rub it in your face, Shannon, but I'm on my second run through of reading this book.
Oh.
But I didn't realize when I did my first read of this, just how well you described this car. Like the car and your words here are oozing with sex appeal. I'm getting like a little flustered the way that it was like nothing I had ever seen. Even the engine ran counterclockwise. I fingered the gear shift, breathed in the smell of leather and oil and something faintly sweet that hinted of beautiful Italian women. Like that's not just me, right?
Yeah, no. I'm getting a little flustered myself. No, it was an interesting car, nonetheless. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my car. We're talking about Shannon Q. This is you'll enjoy this. I posted a link to the show yesterday and today, and promoting it. And someone put in the comments, and they suggested you might going to run with this. that Shannon should have a show with life tips for people, and life advice, and call the show Q-tips. I think that's a pretty good idea.
I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad.
That's not bad, is
Not
it?
bad.
Shannon's
The only problem
Q-tips.
is that my life tips, I'm not sure how good they would be.
People, they get what they pay for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all of my content is free. So
that's right. So what do you expect from us freebies here?
What do you expect? You get what you
okay.
get.
Well, listen, Shannon, I'm so happy to have you on. Genevieve and I've been looking forward to this. You'll get a kick out of it. Paul, I texted Paul about a month ago. Actually, it was longer, and tried to, scheduling him. And finally, I just heard back from him today. It's like, I can imagine.
Just today? You told
just
me
today
he was going to be on in September.
Yeah, he just, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and I didn't hear a thing from him. I thought, oh, well, he's busy or whatever. And then I just imagined him talking to you and saying, hey, I'm on Dave's show tonight. And he went, oh, yeah, I've got to text you. I'm sure that's
if that
exactly.
was the case, he didn't give me the indication that was.
I'm sure that's how it went. But anyway, I'm looking forward to having him in September. I thought about having you both on together, but I really felt like you each needed your own show, because you guys are, you're together, but you're so different, and you have different kinds of content. And I didn't want to merge those two together, because I want to talk to you about Christian counseling.
Yeah.
Kim Possible, our Antichrist donation, $6.66. Thank you for your weekly heathen support. Love, 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 Shannon. That's 3 loves, Shannon.
Hey.
We joke a lot, Shannon, you and I like to poke at each other, but you are dearly loved. Everybody I talk to loves Shannon Q. I mean, it's just true. You just are so real. You're so genuine. You're so stinking smart. And everyone just, every time, oh, Shannon Q, she's awesome. I love Shannon Q. So, I just want you to, you know that, but it's never hurts to hear that. So,
that's very kind. There's no accounting for taste, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, and your beautiful sense of humor, and that unmistakable laugh. We all love that laugh. That's it.
I play soccer. This is like completely an aside. It's about the laugh. So I play soccer, and I've played soccer for decades, and I still play for a senior women's team. And now I'm 40. So I play soccer now. I just joined this senior women's team against people that I had played soccer with throughout my whole life. And 2 weeks ago, I went to a game, and I went up to meet the ref as a captain to do the coin flip and stuff. And I knew the person across from me, and I was like, oh, I recognize you. And because we played together years and years and years and years and years ago. And she said to me, I was like, I'm Shannon. And she said her name. And she was like, I knew it was you because I recognized that laugh.
You know who has another unmistakable laugh. You can hear it from blocks away, and exactly where he's sitting is Daryl Ray.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've gotten to be with Daryl Ray, but we were going to the Recovery from Religion fall excursion last year, and we were trying to find the cabin, and it was there were several cabins, and then I heard the laugh, and I said, Bevan, there it is. There's Daryl. And Zap Brannigan, another Antichrist. We're going to hell tonight, Shannon. We're going straight to hell.
I'm all right with that.
666, going for a trifecta. Hail Dave, Genevieve, and Shannon. I've got a call already, and I kind of wanted to go ahead and get that, and then I want to get a little bit into your story, just for those few people who may not know it, and just to talk about where you came from, and what kind of your content you've been doing, and why you do it, and what's important to you, those kind of things. Okay.
Sure.
But let's take a call from Colorado. Tiger, he, him, schizophrenic, different effects in different parts of the world. How can this be? Hello, Tiger. You're on with Genevieve and Dave and Shannon.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Good to hear from you.
Shannon the Cannon. What are you doing, kid?
Shannon the Cannon.
Hanging out, chatting with you.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Shannon.
Okay.
I was taking an abnormal psych class. God, that's been like 30 years ago. I'm pretty old. And I remembered that schizophrenia in different parts of the world exhibits different symptoms. Like here in the U.S., it's closely associated with violence. Now, I know in parts of Africa and Europe and even some parts of Asia that it's exhibited by like more jovial behavior. Have you heard this?
No, I'm not familiar with it. I'm familiar with schizophrenia. I'm actually reading a book right now, not Dave's book, a different book.
Yeah, no. Mine'll be the last book you read. I understand.
That's right. It's my beach
Well,
book.
what would you attribute that to, sweetie? What do you think would be the cause of I mean, I know it's cultural, but can culture have that much of an impact on a disease, especially something like schizophrenia?
A psychological disorder, culture can have a great deal of impact on how it manifests. Absolutely, because most psychological disorders. I am a little taken aback by this, sweetie, but I'm going to move past.
Yeah.
I'm going to move past it. So the culture, how your culture indicates the appropriate type of social behavior, right? So whatever culture you're in, there's going to be differences in what's an acceptable form of manifesting social behavior. So if you have something like a schizophrenia, which tends to be affiliated with a higher degree of dopamine production, which manifests as in the brain as overactive pattern seeking. So if you're finding patterns where there are no patterns, and attempting to like make sense of that, because we're pattern seeking creatures, right? We're looking for patterns, and then we're attempting to incorporate those patterns into how we think about and interact with our environments. Your culture is a part of your environment. So what your latent culture is and how you have been taught to interpret aspects and perceptions within the environment is going to be different in different areas because of different cultures. So if it may be the case, and this is just speculation, that what people see as deviant behavior could be due to what the culture accepts as normal behavior. So you could be in a cultural environment that accepts more sort of like hyper religious belief or hyper vigilance, or has a more broad boundary of acceptability towards things like violence. That's reasonable. Like 100 years ago, people would get into duels. Like that seems like a reasonable thing that happened 100 years ago. We wouldn't see that as a reasonable interpretation of how to interact with conflict now. Those are all cultural things. So it could be the case that within different cultures, not that it manifests differently from a neurological perspective, but it manifests different, like what they notice as deviant is different based on what they accept as normal. So that
I mean that makes sense.
It does
and
make sense.
I have an instructor. His name is David Stern. He's done a lot of research and wrote in a lot of papers. And he used to think that all people, to some degree, are schizophrenic or exhibit schizophrenic tendencies to some degree, whether or not it's overt or obvious. I don't know. What do you feel?
I think schizophrenia has a very specific pathology, and I'm not a clinician, but I think that allowing that broad a spectrum of definition for people who have schizophrenic behavior could potentially be dangerous and could undermine diagnoses, because there's like a really specific pathology with schizophrenia that does deviate from what
the norm.
Well, not even just what's the norm. Like lots of people like are neurodivergent and deviate from the norm, but with schizophrenia, you can have delusions, you can have hallucinations, like auditory hallucinations are incredibly prominent within people who demonstrate schizophrenia, and interpret them as a component of reality. And that can be resistant to any evidence to the contrary. So couching it within like anybody who maybe is hyper aware of like looking at patterns and like sees meaning where there isn't meaning, and extending the umbrella that far could be dangerous when it comes to like people need antipsychotic treatment when they have schizophrenia, because it extends past just, normal overextension of interpretation of patterns in the environment and interpretation of perceptual cues.
Well, I've heard the term paranoid schizophrenic. So is that a type of schizophrenia, or is that are the two always connected?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to just say a thing. So,
well, as Christians, we would just say things. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something else, Q. Thanks for answering my questions. I had one other thing to bring up with you. Is I think you stole the Q on your show from Johnny Quest.
I did.
I did.
Someone's finally found me out.
Busted.
Actually, it's if you may have been right if it was Q from Star Trek.
Oh,
would have been
okay. I'm not a big Star Trek freak, but with the original series I was. But yeah, I don't know. It just the first time I saw that, I went, "Geez, I know where the hell that came from." It's almost like you was watching Haji and Race and the gang,
I don't know who Johnny Quest
anyway,
is. So I'm sorry.
It was a Saturday morning cartoon show.
I'm a little older than you. I'm 60. I'm almost as old as Dave, which
not quite. I know.
Yeah.
Ancient.
That's scary in the mirror. But anyway, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks,
I appreciate answering my questions. And Shannon, I love your show and I watch it all the time. You too, Dave.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Genevieve.
Thanks, Tiger.
Thanks,
for calling in,
Tiger.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good night, sweetie.
You too.
Oh, Genevieve. Oh, Genevieve.
He's a sweetie. Everybody's a sweetie. It's a non-gendered term of endearment.
Good night, sweetie. Oh my. Yeah, I didn't want to I didn't know what to say. Honestly, I'm sorry, as they say in Canada. Hey, Betsy Castro, thank you for your super chat. Shannon's laugh is contagious. Keep on keeping on, Dave and gang. Bill Castle, thank you for your $5 super sticker. I appreciate your support. Janet, I saw this question come in. I want to talk about this if you guys are okay with that. By the way, that number again, 217-375-9933. Give us a call. This is your chance to ask Shannon anything. I mean, anything. Yes.
Anything.
What position you play in softball, which I already know. Anything. Janet Moorcraft, thank you for your super chat, $19.99. I heard the alarming statistic that 44% of Americans think that within the next 50 years, Christ will come down to earth. What are the implications of this mentality? These people vote. Well, as a psychology person, Shannon, I mean, that stat was for Americans, right? But I mean, there's plenty of them in Canada too, right?
Yeah, not quite as many, and it's not quite as prevalent, and it doesn't intersect with politics quite as much.
No.
We kind of put the kibosh on that when it does happen, at least where I am in Nova Scotia. There's parts of Canada where that's different. So 44% of Americans believe that Christ is coming back within the next 50 years. I guess that there would be a lot of contingencies. So it would depend on what they think that means. It would depend on what they think they need to do about that if they believe it, like personally in order to save themselves or like societally. So without those caveats, I don't know that I would be able to answer the question effectively.
I think I can speak to that a little bit because I mean, 50 years ago, they thought that then too. Because that's back in the Jesus freak days in the 70s. We thought Jesus was coming back next week. And what that mentality does is it causes you to basically, for one thing, not care about the planet, obviously, because it's all going to burn up anyway. Who cares? I mean, this thing's just melting away, and our destiny's in heaven. So it really doesn't matter what we do here. And I've talked about this a lot in my Dying Out Loud work, in that when you focus on another world, another life besides this one, then you by default diminish this one, and it devalues itself. It becomes devalued. So this planet we're living on is devalued because Jesus promised to come and bring a new heaven and a new earth, or take us to paradise or heaven or whatever, whichever version of the Bible you believe, because they all say different things about what our eternal destiny is. Different scriptures say different things. So I think the question Janet was getting to, and the point is probably that because these people don't care about what we have here and now, and it would affect the way you would raise your kids. It would affect the way you would look at anything that has to do with longevity or the future, because this is all passing away, and it doesn't really matter in the scope of eternity. So that's the alarming thing of people who think that way. 44%.
I wonder if that would cause you to be more individualistic too. Like, and there's a lot of evidence that people who are more prone to fear tend to be significantly more conservative as well. Like that, like the evidence just parses that out over and over and over again. Like if you're motivated by some sort of like fear, you're less likely to be risk taking. So you're more likely to want to maintain the status quo, or whatever you perceive as the status quo. And you're more likely to want to kind of like preserve something that you see as a defense. Like you go into self-preservation mode.
Yeah.
So I can see why that would motivate people to not want to make progressive change and to not be as interested in out groups being, okay, right? Like out groups being taken care of. It would make you more tribalistic too, I would think, because you would want to make sure that your in-group is protected in so much as you perceive them being protected by your specific paradigm, your ideology.
Yeah. And, I would say when it comes to that heightened individualism that comes from that fear, it's definitely difficult to parse out whether or not that is influenced by one's belief that Christ is going to return in 50 years versus just the general culture of like hyper individualism that we have in America. Because just overall, even in secular spaces, we're just not a very collectivist society. A lot of us are trying to bring that sort of mentality back, but largely that is very much missing from the United States, which is why we don't have things like taxpayer-funded healthcare, et cetera. So I'm not sure which would have a greater impact. I would almost say that if somebody believes that Jesus is returning in their lifetime, how they react, I don't think that would necessarily be coming from a place of fear, because they're very confident in their place in Christ. I do think, however, they would become that much more controlling of others, if you will. So, for example, they might feel confident with their place in heaven, but will that change if they vote for somebody who is pro-LGBT or pro-abortion, as they would say? I feel like that might, sort of subconsciously have something to do with sort of this like heightened radicalized Christian nationalism that we're facing now. I don't know how much of it is them just generally being bigoted, or how much of that is just this like urgent fervor to carry out the Bible the way that they see it.
Do you think that could somehow be placed within fear as well? Because they feel as though if they deviate from the course, then they're gonna face repercussions. And that may also extend, like the controlling thing's an interesting part, because they may see, and you see this all the time with the truth and love people, and those people just drive me bonkers. They drive me bonkers the most, because they control their cadence in order to make it feel like they're telling you like horrible things about yourself and what they want to happen to you and who they think you think you should
God
be
loves you enough
out
to
of
send
love.
you to hell.
Right, exactly. Or I'm telling you this because I love you. And
I
don't
loved
want
you,
to
and I don't
go
want you to
hell.
go to hell.
Right. Yeah, that
God
drives
loves
me.
you so much, he's willing to let you send yourself to hell.
Yes, exactly. So like if they're extending that over other people that they care about, they may legitimately have a fear that this is like, so there's going to be
There's a
repercussions not for me,
core,
but for people I care about if
Mhm.
I don't act in this way.
and there's a core of fear, even in that mindset of Jesus is coming back to get me. He's
Mm,
going to come, he's going to return, because this Jesus that they talk about is not the gentle lamb lying down with the little children
it's Revelation Jesus.
it's the Jesus with a fiery sword in his
Mm,
mouth and a flames out of his eyes, and he's exacting vengeance on the earth, and there's this war with Satan. It's a very scary Jesus. It's a very scary God. In their view, is a scary figure, not a loving father, but a scary. We were listening driving today, Bevan and I. We were listening to. I don't know how we got on Johnny Cash songs, but
awful
Johnny was a very religious man in his later years,
hmm
and his religion was all about this big bad God that's gonna. One of his songs is "God is gonna get you.
Yeah.
You better straighten up, buddy, because God is gonna get you." And that's the God that these people are looking to return. And and they, like you said, Shannon, they will tell you that God's going to get you, and they'll
hmm
smile and say, "I love you, but God's going to get you," like it's supposed to go down easier with that. But that's the kind of God they're looking for to return in their lifetime or within the next 50 years. So it's the whole landscape of it is laden with fear and
Yeah.
judgment and apocalyptic language. It's not a pretty picture, but they
Sure.
revel in that. And so these are people
Really?
these are people who just revel in fear and violence and hatred, and then they want to tell you that it's because God loves you. The disconnect there mentally is astounding to me.
Yeah, that's what I was like. How do you feel? Like, I don't think that I could personally reconcile that dissonance of being like rife with empathy for other people and also aware that other people who have like just the same type of faults that I have, and otherwise are good people could be subjected, like people I care about could be
Yeah.
subjected to something like that by someone that I'm supposed to love the most and is supposed to love all of us the most. Like, that dissonance would be overwhelming for me. Even if I did believe it, that would be a source of consistent pain
Mhm.
for
It's
me.
disconnect.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
The-
happy about it. I would be
No.
No.
devastated.
Well, that's kind of the caveat. The first thing you said is that how do you reconcile that overwhelming empathy? And I
Yeah.
think that's exactly what's missing from this equation is that there is a major lack of empathy, particularly when you take, this fear of the out groups to not just, be, immigrants or whoever the boogeyman is this week in
Mhm.
these Christian conservative circles, but just also non-Christians.
Right.
Those are, I'm sure that other former Christians could speak to this better than I can, is that a lot of times I've seen people see others as either they're saved or they're not. And that's
Mhm.
kind of the big deal. If they're not saved, you can try to save them. And if they're unsavable, then they're a bad influence or Satan's got to them. And, so why would you have empathy for people who you see as willingly denying God in favor of Satan? It does
Yeah.
mess with your empathy.
Well, there's
Um,
to live it, because I did live in that evangelical world for several decades, and so I know how that mind works and what the thinking there is, and there is a black and white binary thinking, Genevieve. It's very us versus them, and there has to be an us versus them because the whole thing is predicated on this blood sacrifice, this blood cult. And so for that to be a factor, for there to be this blood sacrifice, someone had to pay a price. And we're told that it's Jesus paying the price for us because we were going to have to pay the price for our sin. But he stepped in and became the substitute. And that whole thing is predicated on this God that demands a sacrifice. Let's just
Right.
stop there for a minute. What's fucked up about that picture? I mean,
Yeah.
imagine and so this is not a loving father God. Imagine a father of 7 children saying that one of you are going to have to pay because you're all little sinners, and I'm going to accept the sacrifice of one of you for all of you. But I need something. I need some blood to be spilled.
Well, more alarming as well is how we see, Western Eurocentric Christian circles like really looking down upon religions from other cultures, particularly, historic religions where they'll say, oh, yeah, they're savages, or, there's these human sacrifices and all these crazy things. And I'm like, that's kind of the entire premise of your whole deal. Like that's your favorite part of the shtick. You wear the weapon around your neck.
Yeah.
What kind of religion would celebrate a human sacrifice? That's crazy.
That's still just othering other people and seeing yourself as better.
I saw a meme once, and Jesus was in a cartoon holding up a cross necklace, and he said, "What gave them the idea that I would enjoy this? That was not a good day."
Yeah.
Do you ever
Shannon,
wonder? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go.
I was just. This is something that weighs on me a lot, and I've thought about it a lot, and how Christianity presents the idea of love, like how it teaches you what the idea of love is. It teaches you that it's contingent. I often worry that people who are in that mindset, the mindset we were talking about, like the fundamentalist mindset, are almost akin to someone who's in an abusive relationship, right?
Oh, it's so abusive. Yeah.
Yeah. Like where you are willing to isolate yourself from others. You're willing to, sacrifice relationships. You're willing to do anything you can to appease the person that you want that love from. Because otherwise there'll be repercussions if you don't love them the way they tell you have to love them. And that is their model for love. And thus they project that into the world. Like they enact that in other circumstances and situations to their own detriment and the detriment of others. It's like perpetuating an abusive cycle.
Oh, it's terribly abusive.
I think about that all the time.
And we're told it's unconditional love, and it's the most conditional love I've ever seen.
Absolutely conditional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love me or else.
They're
love me or else. Yes.
I mean, I remember,
sick.
I remember talking to, a really close friend of mine who is, a devout evangelical Christian, and they had said that, the reason why they love God and they're so devout is because God is the first place that they've known unconditional love. And I sort of paused and, I'm not gonna, I can joke here as much as I want to, but when it comes to actually talking to people who take this seriously, I tend to be much more gentle. And it genuinely did break my heart. I told her, I was like, wow, like my family, like that's unconditional love. Like there's plenty of places where I've experienced unconditional love, but like this situation, it absolutely, I mean, if you are being dangled over a fiery pit in hell, then how is that not the most conditional thing in the universe? An eternity of torture? It's absolutely abusive, especially when you think back to that whole idea of Jesus sacrificing himself. It's like, I didn't ask for that. I was born 2,000 years later. Why are you like rubbing it in my face that you've done so much for me when I never even asked you to?
Yeah.
And I like that is like, it is absolutely like exactly what I've seen in abusive relationships. It's incredibly toxic.
Yeah. And if I could save Jesus, I would. And then what?
Yeah.
Right? And then what? Would I be a bad guy for saving Jesus? Would that make me a bad person if I saved him from being crucified? Because that would have condemned
the rest of humanity.
The rest of humanity for eternity to damnation if I had saved his life. So you're telling me that that's a bad act. Like, how can you simultaneously say that you should be gracious and that you should do everything you can to preserve life? Whereas if I had saved Jesus, all of us would be condemned. So I would have to let him die. The moral thing to do would be to let someone die, and that's like it doesn't make
It's
and like you
completely counterintuitive.
yeah, like the dissonance is just overwhelming to me. I don't know how people can reconcile it. I just don't understand.
Well, we did for a long time, many of us.
Me
You were
too.
raised, yeah. Now refresh me. You were raised how, Shannon? What
I was a
your
vanilla
background?
Christian. I was Anglican.
Oh, that's not even a real Christian in my book.
So I've heard. So I've heard. So I have heard.
You lukewarm people,
Yeah.
you weren't on fire for Jesus like we were.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
I thought I
so
was, but I guess
so
I was
how
wrong.
long did you stay in that? What give us a little background on Shannon Q.
Oh, I was like competitively Christian. So like in my church, there was no female altar girls. So I was like, I will be one. So I was the first female altar
Of
girl in my
course.
church. They
Why does
said
that surprise none of us?
I was a little bit
Seriously.
little bit competitive. And in the Anglican church, you get confirmed. So you get baptized basically when you're born, and then you get confirmed into the church, usually like in your teens. I wasn't waiting. I was not waiting. I wanted to do. I did it when I was like between 8 and 9.
So you were raised in
with
this,
my
and so
confirmation.
you were
So-
raised in it. Your parents
Oh,
raised
yeah.
you in this, and so you bought into it and said, "I want to be the best Christian there is." Kind of that was your attitude.
Yeah. Well, my parents divorced basically when I was born.
Okay.
And my dad was Catholic. I actually ended up being baptized Catholic when my parents were still together. But I was raised in the Anglican church because my grandmother, who is absolutely the matriarch of my family, and I have not a bad thing to say about her. She was an amazing human.
Mhm.
She was very devout, and my mom didn't really go to church because she was divorced, so she couldn't really. So my grandmother would come and pick me up on Sunday mornings. We would go to the flea
she was
market, and then we'd
divorced.
go to church.
She couldn't go as a divorced woman because she was scandalized, or is that what you mean, or what?
I think that she was pretty devout also, and she saw herself as no longer in faithful communion.
Damaged. Okay.
Mhm.
Did the church have that position, or just how she kind of saw herself?
I don't know the full answer to that. I think that it was more so her general position towards it was that she was no longer in faithful communion. She was still devout, but she wouldn't attend services really anymore as a result of that, despite she still believes today, but she doesn't go to church.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then how old were you when you kind of started letting go of that?
In my mid 20s. So the going to university started to unravel a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't reconcile, like I always believed in evolution, like that. It floored me when I found out there was Christians that didn't for reasons of faith. Like I had no idea that was even a thing until like in my 30s. I just had no idea young earth creationists were like a prevalent thing that existed.
Wow.
But I couldn't reconcile my morals or the soul with the Bible. And I realized in my mid-20s, I had some like relatively traumatic things happen. And as you do, I turned to the scripture, right? Because that's where you're supposed to find the answers to things like this. And I read the Bible for the first time in my like life period. Like I had read passages of it, and I had done my devotionals and my studies that were assigned to me, and read passages that were like passages that I enjoyed, but I had never read it cover to cover. So I started doing that because throwing myself into faith was supposed to be the answer to this trauma, and it ended up compounding the issue.
Yeah.
Because now not only was I going through trauma, but I was having a crisis of faith simultaneously. So because like right from go, like I read Genesis and I was like, okay, he put man and woman on the earth, and I'm like, oh shit, he's doing it again. Like that's really weird. There's got to be a way to reconcile that. That's probably fine. That's probably fine.
Shit, he's doing it again.
And then I got to the actual story of Sodom and Gomorrah with Lot and like his 2 daughters getting him
That's
drunk
not fucked up, is it?
yeah,
No.
yeah, and Jephthah, and then I got to the test for the unfaithful wife, and I threw the Bible. I literally threw it. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? Like, I had been told my whole life that abortion is bad because God, blah, 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 blah. And then I read the test for the unfaithful wife, where like, if you think your wife might have cheated on you while you're away at war, you can just go and get her to drink dirt water at the church. And if she was unfaithful, then God will abort the baby for you and just make her infertile forever. All of that stuff blew my mind. And then, but the linchpin for me was once I started studying like neuroanatomy, and especially at the microscopic level, I could no longer reconcile the soul. It just did not seem feasible. It didn't seem plausible. There was a huge interaction problem that I couldn't reconcile. And that was it. I was done. Like, that was, because most of the other things I could try to be like, okay, well, you know, this is just allegory, or, you know, this was for a different time. But once I was like, okay, well, there's nowhere for my immortal soul to go if there is no soul. I was done. That was it.
Talk about that some more, because I know that I was watching your video on the unholy, what do we call them? The
ungodly soul ties.
Ungodly soul ties, and the Christian counselors who you love so much.
I hate them.
We're breaking down how we're made, body, soul, and spirit, and that's what we were always taught. You have this outer shell, which is your body. You have your soul, which is the seat of your emotions, your mind, your will, your emotions. And then your spirit, which becomes perfect when you ask Jesus into your heart. And their little diagram with the Holy Spirit in there, and the little demons that were in your soul and your body. So when you go back and talk about that a minute, when you discovered, when you realized there was no place for a soul to be a part of our humanity.
What made me realize that?
Yeah, well, process that a little more, because that's the linchpin of Christianity, is your soul is saved, and it's the part that lives forever.
Right.
The body falls down, dies, and decays, but the soul is eternal. And so how did you realize that wasn't a possible thing?
Oh, I just don't. I can. It's going to get a little bit technical, so hopefully you guys are cool with that.
That's why we brought you on, girl.
Anybody who's seen me has probably heard this before. But okay, so in your brain.
Let me grab a couple of super chats real quick.
Grab a couple. Do that first.
You take a drink. Derek Cruz, thank you. $5. Great show tonight. Love you. And
hi,
thank
Derek.
you. Courageous.
Hi.
Hey, Courageous, $4.99. Thank you. Were you told? Yeah, Korea. Were you told if you were the only person on earth, Jesus would still have died for you? Then you asked who would kill Jesus, and your dad said you would. I'm guessing that happened to you, Korea. That's awful. Oh my God. You better believe in or your ghost is going to get burnt. Oh, Jesus.
Burn my ghost. Go ahead. I don't care.
Then I saw a super chat from student Dr. Ben. Hey, Dave. Hey, Dave, back it in, bitch. That's a private joke. Oh, back it in, bitch. That's from a trucker game that he explained that he plays with some friends online. And oh, my God, he was telling me about that in the comments they share with each other about their trucker loads and things. And I died laughing. This was at the conference at Better. We got to hang out there. So that's pretty fucking funny. So break this soul thing down, because that's you do know this cuts at the very core of evangelical Christianity, and if what you're saying is true, they've got nothing, and that's where you came to, right?
Yeah, that's where I realized I had nothing. So everything that happens in your brain happens because of neuronal firing, right? So this conversation that we're having now, every thought that happens in your head, every breath you take, every beat of your heart happens because neurons are firing and sending electrochemical messages, right? So that's irrefutable. We all know that is abjectly the case. There's like no way around that, right? So how do neurons fire? Like, what causes a neuron to fire? So a neuron fires specifically because there's a concentration of sodium and potassium ions on either side of the cell membrane of that neuron. And a neuron is like any other microscopic cell in your body. Like, it has a nucleus, it has a mitochondria. The only real substantial difference with a neuron is that it has dendrites that extend out of it. And those dendrites are sheathed with like an insulated covering, like kind of like an electrical cord has like that like rubber covering to protect the impulse or the electrical current from shooting out all over the place. Myelin does that on the like dendrites that shoot out of neurons. And that's how it sends an electrical signal that then releases a chemical that communicates with the next neuron. In order for that to happen, there needs to be a specific concentration of sodium and potassium ions on either side of the cell membrane. When that reaches a specific threshold, the mitochondria in the cell produces a chemical called ATP, and that ATP opens a channel, and that channel allows the sodium and potassium ions to transmit back and forth through the cell membrane, and that creates an electrical current. Like it creates what's called an action potential, and that action potential is what initiates that electrical impulse that allows that neuron to fire and then communicate to all of the other neurons and tell them to release neurotransmitters so that anything ever that you do can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on its face, if you don't think about it, that sounds like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, what does that have to do with the soul? But what that has to do with the soul is that there's an interaction problem. So if your soul exists outside of you, like if your soul is something other than you, right? Like something other than your physical corporeal form, then how does your soul put sodium and potassium ions on either side of a cell membrane en masse in order for your neurons to fire? Because if your soul is what's causing you to be you, if what you are is your soul, then your soul would have to have some sort of influence on the brain. Your soul would have to make your brain do things. And the only way to make your brain do things is to physically reconstruct that ratio on either side of the cell membrane for any neuron in your brain at any given time, for all of them simultaneously, in fact. And if that were the case, if you were like, let's say, about to make a bad decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make what like a Christian bad decision. And your soul is what needs to be saved, right? So your soul is what's at the expense of this bad decision is your soul. Your
Right.
soul should theoretically be able to influence your brain to make a different decision, but it just physically can't. It can't, because how is it moving that physical matter back and forth on either side of those neurons? It's impossible. It can't do it. It doesn't have little sodium potassium ion tweezers to change the constitution of the physical matter of your brain.
None of this in the Bible. You realize that, so it must be false what you're saying, because it's not in the Bible.
Well, I realized that and came to a different conclusion than you've just stated.
Yeah.
I went, oh shit.
Yeah. So that I've had this conversation with Christians since my deconversion, in that, why if Jesus is supposed to help people, when Jesus comes in and changes me, I'm born again.
Mm-hmm.
That's the language. I become a new creature. I'm now living from my spirit, which is perfect, and it affects my soul and my body.
Right.
If that's true, no Christian would ever sin.
Right. And also there'd be no such thing as free will, because how is Jesus changing you if that's the case?
Exactly. So have you had this conversation with Christians since you've had your channel, or in person, or anything?
What about the soul? Oh, God.
Yeah, that whole thing. What typical responses do you get?
We go into philosophy.
Listen, Christians, listen.
What happens almost 100% of the time is that they start to default into philosophy, and they talk about how it really doesn't matter because philosophically, yada, 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 yada. And I'm like, but I feel like you're not listening to what I'm saying, because I think a lot of the philosophy is predicated on not fully understanding the actual science around how the brain works. It's speculative. Like it sees the brain as this sort of like amorphous blob that can be influenced by energy or whatever the fuck. And that's just, sorry, I did a swear, but like,
oh no, not on my channel.
That's just not the case though, right? So you would need dualism, especially dualism,
exactly,
to be able to explain this interaction problem for me to accept it. many of them just say, well, that interaction problem just really isn't a problem because there must just be a way that the soul can do it. But unless you can give me the mechanism by which that is the case, then
they're basically
you have
saying,
nothing for me.
They're basically saying it's magic.
Kind of, yeah. They're just, or they just say, well, you don't understand the philosophy. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck if I understand the philosophy. You don't understand the science. Like, I don't
the
care.
Human body. Right.
Make sense to me and you might be able to convert me, but nobody's interested in making that make sense to me because there is no explanation for that interaction problem. There just isn't one. There's no viable explanation from a Christian perspective for that interaction problem. There's just proselytizing to me about how I don't understand philosophy. And I don't care. And if you are a Christian, you should be interested in reconciling that objection for me and not telling me why that objection is not valid. Because it absolutely is.
Well, have you considered all of the energy that is stored in crystals? I was gonna say, really, yeah. Clearly, I was gonna say sodium as a father, potassium as a son, and then the Holy Spirit is clearly all these magic fucking crystals. It's just a combination of Christianity and new.
Well, there's a comment I see. I want to speak to Shannon. Snipey McSended, $5. Love you, Dave. Thank you, Snipey. Tom Derby says even Shannon is right about brain neurology because she can't prove a soul doesn't exist.
It's
Shannon, what about that, Shannon?
I mean, I can't. There's a myriad things that you can't prove don't exist.
You can't prove there's not a leprechaun in my pocket right now.
Right. Like you can't prove something doesn't exist doesn't prove that it does.
Yeah, that's a fallacious argument.
It's a plausibility escape hatch that
and you know better than that, Tom.
Especially when you look at the nuance. Like you can't prove that the Christian version of this, you can, I think, prove that the Christian version of the soul doesn't exist.
Yeah,
I really think that's the case.
Well, and when we talked about eternal life and heaven, this argument, I haven't heard Christians explain this yet. I didn't understand it when I was a Christian. There's so many things as a Christian you just accept out of hand. You don't even think about it. You're just told this is what it is, and you just believe it, and you don't even question it. You don't challenge it. And so this concept of going to heaven, the idea that some of us are in heaven and some of us in hell. And the question is, what if you get to heaven and you realized, oh, my son didn't make it. My daughter, my brother, my mom didn't make it. And first of all, how would you know that? And if you did know that, how do you be happy in heaven where they say there are no tears in heaven? Other than Eric Clapton's, but how do you reconcile knowing that you have a loved one burning in hell for eternity while you're enjoying harps and marshmallows? And their only answer is that your memory you won't remember them, right, Genevieve? Is that what I mean? Yep. That's the only answer I've gotten. You just won't remember them.
Yeah,
and then that means I'm not me. Then I'm not me.
Yeah, it's that I've heard that you won't remember them. I've also heard that once you're in God's presence, you'll understand why it's totally okay that your loved ones are burning in hell, which, exactly what you said, Dave. Like that, I would not be me if I saw that injustice and didn't say, yo, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is not okay. Why are you doing this to billions of people? Like, that's,
Depends on if you're an annihilationist too, because some people will be like, okay, well, that person's not being tortured. They're like, they just don't exist anymore. But then you're telling me, like, I have two answers for that. The answer one is, so you're telling me that I need to be, if it was my son, if you're telling me that like I converted to Christianity or whatever, and I end up in heaven, and then my son is just annihilated. You want me to be happy for eternity being separated from my son. I don't think that's possible. And also simultaneous, like even ignoring the eternal portion of it, how could I be happy if I passed away and my son is on earth, like just in abject torment? like for years and years and years, like the rest of his life, like dealing with the grief of losing me, or dealing with like, let's say he has an illness, or he's going through an addiction, or knowing that he's still in torment. How can I be happy while that's concurrent?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how that could be the case unless you tell me that you're going to reconstitute who I am so that I don't care about the people and things I care about anymore, in which case you're right, I'm just not me anymore. And
it's just
it doesn't
the
make
only
sense.
plausible understanding of it is just magic. It's like a Harry Potter scene. It's just things are happening magically that we can't explain or understand. Even though, to your point earlier, Shannon, the whole idea of a soul that doesn't make sense on any level, that a part of us can exist outside of ourselves in some world or universe that you can't even figure out. Okay, where is this place? It's the third, fourth, fifth dimension. What is this?
Yeah,
It makes no sense. It makes no sense on any level, and yet we just accept it because they tell us. So
no more
question everything. So you let go of religion as you got through college. You got a psychology degree.
I did.
And then you didn't go on to get your doctorate in psychology.
No, I was pregnant when I was doing my thesis work in my seminar. And then I was breastfeeding when I finished. So I decided to shill out and go get a job in the corporate world instead of pursuing what I ultimately wanted to do. But yeah, no, I still got the degree though. I finished.
And you've got all the stuff you learned in there, which you've put to good use. Now your channel, if someone were to ask you, what is Shannon Q's channel about? What's your focus? Why do you do it? How long you've been doing it? Give us the backstory there.
I started my channel by accident. I was just kind of milling around in the community. Periodically, I would join a stream.
How long ago was this? Back when?
3 or 4 years ago, probably 4 years ago. And so I started just being interested in engaging in dialogue with people who believe different things, because the atheist community back then, as I saw it before I expanded my, broadened my horizons and discovered more people, wasn't representative of who I was. And I didn't see a lot of people like me, and like women, just in general, at all.
Like me, as
like
in
me.
women.
As in women, yeah,
sweeties,
sweetie,
the sweeties.
honey. Yeah, yeah, honey, sweetie. Yeah, exactly. So, I wanted to, they say be the change you want to see, right? Like I saw a lot of people not wanting to own the atheist label because it was attached to a lot of toxicity.
Yeah.
And to me, it seemed as though the only way to really change that was to be an open atheist who was existing in the sphere as a juxtaposition to that, and just going out and around and having dialogues. And one of the things that I studied and was passionate about was dialectics and communication strategies. So I thought, well, this is a place where I can employ some of those skills in an environment where I think it's needed, because most of it was just battles of like who's smart. It was just pissing contests constantly. So I started doing that, and I ended up actually getting 1,000 subscribers before I posted a video.
How did you do that?
I have no idea. And it was a running joke that one day I would post a video if I hit 1,000 subscribers, and I had almost 2,000 when I posted my first video, and I did it begrudgingly because I was like, here you guys go.
Everybody
fine, I'll post a video.
See, everybody loves Shannon.
Yeah. But I did it with an intention. Like I knew that if I was going to do it, then I wanted it to like follow my values. So I came up with like kind of 3 core values, which was be better, not the same. Advocate for your own understanding, and elevate the discourse. So I wanted people to focus on source methodology. Try not to, I personally wanted to try not to feed into becoming one of those people that was attempting to get clicks by being salacious. And I still hold to that. And the advocate for your understanding was really important to me because so many people take somebody that they follow and they'll just take what they say and be like, okay, well that's what it is. And I wanted to make sure that when people were listening to me, they knew that this was just my opinion and that I was providing sources and that they should go advocate for their own understanding because I could be wrong. I do that, but like when I am wrong, I try to own it for that reason because I think that integrity is important, and elevating the discourse because I think the way that dialogue surrounding this take place can sometimes be so caustic that people don't want to engage with them, even though they're exceptionally important, because they're so worried about how that's going to go down that it just doesn't happen. So I wanted to try to make a platform where that could happen organically, even though we're diametrically opposed to each other and disagree on a fundamental level, so that we could understand each other better and maybe move forward.
Well, I think you do a good job of that.
Thanks. I try. So I fail sometimes. Don't follow me on Twitter.
Everybody loves you on Twitter.
I have impulse control problems.
Well, and that's one of the things I think people do love about you, Shannon, is that you're very vulnerable. You're very open about your ideas and saying, I may be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. And I don't mind saying that. And not a lot of people are able to do that. So good for you.
It's good for you. It's important to be able to do that, though.
I think so, too. Yeah.
All of the things that we rile against are that, we thought we were right for a really long time and found out we were wrong. And we wear that as a badge of honor, right? That we were skeptics and learned through our skepticism. So those same principles should be able to be applied now, even though we're not religious anymore. Like that ability doesn't stop. That doesn't stop being a virtue just because you manage to like not be religious anymore. You probably still have a lot of vestigial ideas that are incorrect as a result of poor epistemology that you may not even realize. You still have to own that as, a choice in how you approach the world, not just how you approach religion, but how you approach the world. Especially in the environment that we live in now, where there's so much misinformation and there's so much tribalism. Like enacting that is more important than ever, not just when it comes to what you believed in the way of religion, but what you believe day to day. That should constantly be challenged. You should make sure that your epistemology is solid. And admitting you're wrong is a step towards that.
Yeah, those of us that came out of any kind of religion and realized we had bad ideas and were wrong, we should understand that we have the capability of being wrong at any time about anything. And if I ever find out I've been wrong about something, I'll be the first to admit it. But so far I haven't.
So far you haven't. Not even once.
Courageous. Thank you. No one should be a parent if they're willing for their kid to go to hell. I'm not a parent, but I'd burn for kids. Yes, you're right. Thank you for Courageous $4.99. And Toy Ranch, faithful viewer and follower and supporter. The idea of eternal life is horrific to me. 1,000 years in and trillions to go. No way to opt out of the whole thing if you're a Christian. I know I never could wrap my head around eternity. We do have a call, and it's actually a question about heaven. So let's take that call. David, he, him in Texas. You're on with Shannon Q. What's your question, David?
Just a question I always wondered about. I never heard this asked or answered by Christians. Like, say if you die and you go to heaven, if everyone on earth is supposedly we're all sinners and we're pieces of garbage, why are we suddenly like good people once we change geographic locations into heaven? I never got that part. If that makes any sense.
What are your thoughts, Genevieve or Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I'm definitely not going to be the expert on this, but when people say that there's no sin in heaven, like I agree with sort of what you're saying. It's like, well, if so much of who you are is what you do and your actions and your thoughts, and you have sinful thoughts, even though you repent, are you really yourself? And I'm sure it would just be that you are made perfect in God's presence. But I also think that by the way that I have heard heaven described by many Christians is like, I don't think that they're expecting you to be perfect up there. I mean, I think if you were perfect, then you wouldn't be on your knees worshiping God every day. You'd be sitting right next to him. I think that sort of like the nature of the hierarchy, even within this, concept of heaven, still puts you beneath somebody else. Like, I think that in general, the entire theology has a way of just looking down upon yourself as an unworthy person who is just
Yes.
lucky to be in the good graces of this tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never thought of that. That's brilliant.
Mhm.
If you
You.
become a perfect being, then you'd be you'd be co-perfect.
You'd be God.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to maintain a level of imperfection, which means I had never thought. That's brilliant, Genevieve.
Thank you.
It's really good. I like that.
Well, the Christian theology, David, to the point of your question, the Christian, and if I were a Christian, you asked me that, my response would be based upon the talking points of Christian theology, or at least evangelical theology, is that we are changed. And when we're born again, we go from being sinners to saints. This language we used ad nauseum in our churches. That we are saints of God, and we've been made new. We were once lost, now we're saved, and our spirits have been made new. Our body is being renewed. Our soul is being renewed. Our mind is being renewed, and we're constantly being sanctified. Another word, which is made better, made cleaner, constantly by the power of the Holy Spirit while we live here. And then when we are transported magically to this heavenly place, wherever that is, then the imperfect becomes perfect. But to Genevieve's point, we're not quite as perfect as the big guy. We're just right up there next to him, but just enough to let us know our place. But the question that never has been satisfactorily answered to me is, will there be free will in heaven? Because according to, again, Christian theology, the kind that I was swimming in, there was free will once, because Lucifer took a third of the angels and fell to heaven. So he rebelled against God. Satan was an angel of God and rebelled against God. And so he free will of his own free will, along with a third of his compatriots, rebelled against God and were cast down to the earth to tempt man, because God was a sick, sadistic thug and wants to tempt and play with man like he did Job. And so all of that's going on while people are on the earth. That's how they explain the presence of evil. Is that there's this spiritual battle going on, demons and angels. And you can, by the way, open a portal to the demons if you have a soul. Shannon's getting a headache.
It makes me so mad.
Oh, I know it. I know it does. I'm sorry to trigger you, but
You're not.
that's
Fuck you.
but-
No, you're not.
no. I really do enjoy it in some sick way. But no, that's what they really think, Shannon. You got to know that's what they really think, that you can literally. I saw this video you were playing by sins against you, by
You can have them generationally. Yeah.
generational sins.
Mhm.
Just by being fucking born,
Mhm.
you open portals to demons. Let's think about that for just 1 minute, how sick that is. And God has designed this system, by the way. This omnipotent, omnibenevolent God has designed this system where you can be born with demons rattling around in your soul and in your brain without having ever done anything. That is some weird shit. But the idea that when we go to heaven, there couldn't be free will again is counterintuitive to what there was before, unless heaven's a different place now. So it doesn't make any sense. And if there can be free will in heaven after we go there, who's to say we don't just have a bad day and say, you know what, I'm going to rebel against God? How does this make any sense cognitively? Is there any way to make sense of it? David, what do you think? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. It gives me some stuff to think about. I think basically it doesn't make any sense is the main answer, I guess.
Yeah, that's gonna be the long story short of any answer we give you.
I mean,
You're
have you
looking at
had
us to make sense of it? You're barking up the wrong tree.
Have you had Christian friends or family? Have you talked with them about these things? What are the answers you get?
That's a good question. I'll ask one next time I talk to one. Maybe I'll call you back next time and I can see what kind of answer I get.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And again, I think the only answer they come up with is the stuff you've been getting, Shannon. It's just kind of a psychological mumbo jumbo and psychobabble, and I like to throw it back at them and say, "Oh, so you're just saying magic like Harry Potter? Boy, that makes them mad. That makes them mad. No, God doesn't do magic. Yeah, but he does. So yeah. Well, let us know, David, if you have any fruitful conversations with your Christian friends and family, and they have any. You know what? I'd love it if they had some answers. We'd be all ears, I think, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
I'll ask my mother. You know, one funny story. My mother keeps crucifixes around her oven because she's afraid that the oven's going to blow up at night. I don't know what that's about, but anyway. I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, David. Thanks. Yeah,
take care.
Thanks, David, for calling in, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah, the simple answer to that is just turn the gas off.
I know. I hope those crucifixes aren't flammable. Jesus
I'm-
Christ.
I'm worried about what's for dinner if she thinks that her oven is literally the portal to hell. Like, I wouldn't trust anything coming out of there. I would be hot pockets and nothing else.
Yeah, I'll just order a pizza, Mom. Thanks.
Yeah, we're good. Nope.
But I mean, what kind of magic is that? What kind of superstitious magic is that? Now, I don't know much about you. You grew up in Anglican, right? Is that kind of a sister to Catholicism? Is it kind of parallel in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I know an unreasonable amount about the Tudors, so I could tell you all about it.
An unreasonable amount, okay.
I do, yeah. So yeah, but yeah, it's kind of it's if you went to an Anglican church and a Catholic church, you'd find a great deal of similarities in like how we take communion and how the church itself is structured. We don't have crucifixes.
You don't do the Mother Mary.
We do not pray to the saints.
Or
that is
what about Mother
idolatry.
Mary? What about
That's
Mother
idolatry. Yeah, we don't. We only pray to
God and Jesus.
Yeah, we don't pray to the saints.
Does the Holy Spirit get any love?
Yeah, of course, absolutely, because
okay.
you can only come to the Father through the Holy Spirit. So absolutely,
which
but
makes total
a
sense,
lot of
right?
it's peeled down Catholicism. I think
what I thought. Yeah.
Someone in the chat called it Diet Catholicism.
We would call it Catholicism less the idolatry.
Okay.
Yeah.
without all the idolatry.
Without all that sin.
Rosaries. There's we don't defer to a pope for all, because there is no human on earth that can be the representative of God. Except for, evidently whoever the current monarch of England is.
Do they hold to a salvation experience, or are you just kind of baptized into the church?
No, you're baptized into there's no altar calls.
Okay.
There's no
born again experience.
There's
right.
there's no you come up and share your testimony. There's none of that.
Yeah.
Just none of that. No.
Okay.
Me and Paul had like this crazy conversation once because I had no idea. Like, he told me how they took communion in his church. And that was like a 5 hours of our lives that neither of us are going to get back, because both of us, as atheists, we're arguing with each other
about the right way to take
wrong
communion.
It was that the way the other one did communion.
Oh God! And what I would pay to have a video of that conversation.
Yeah,
what I would
5
pay.
hours of just you can't do that.
Oh no, because he was Mennonite, right? Like that's
he was.
That's going to be a very different side of the spectrum from just Anglican.
Yeah, we'll have a very different conversation.
Pieces of bread in cups, and they didn't even go to the altar. They sat down while they took it. That's bullshit.
Blasphemy! Blasphemy!
Disrespect for the body of Christ. They didn't even get
blessed. They didn't have to go with their hands.
Apostate Ashley says garbage. It's basically Episcopalian. Yeah, that's
where's the respect?
Shannon, I think we got another call coming in, but before that, I want to you talked at the Better Conference about forming community. It was a great talk.
Thanks.
Give us a snapshot of what that was you were talking about and why that was important to you.
Oh, I think it's exceptionally important when it comes to like, I was mostly talking about like decentralized movements, kind of, and why we see what we see within the atheist community. Because within the atheist like community as it is, you see lots of people come into the community because they've had this massive identity shift for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. Like most of the
Right.
people that are coming in that I weren't like born as an atheist
Mm-hmm.
are coming in because they've had this massive identity shift and they no longer belong to their previous group or their previous tribe, however you want to refer to it. And now they need to kind of reconstruct their entire identity. And they
Right.
need to figure out where they sit. And communities don't simply coalesce based on like this sort of like arbitrary aspect of your identity or this arbitrary trait that's assigned to you, because atheism really is just sort of this arbitrary trait. It's
Right.
just a thing that is true about you. And I used the reference of shoe size a fair amount when I was having the conversation or when I was giving the speech. Because your shoe size is a fact about you, but it's an arbitrary designation. Like people aren't forming conferences and forming communities over who has
And
similar
it
shoe
only
sizes.
speaks to one part of us. It's
Correct.
simply our response to the God claim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in it, and above and beyond that, it doesn't tell you anything about your identity
Not at
or
all.
your values.
Mm-mm.
So when these communities form, they tend to form around common goals.
Right.
So that is like what unites communities ultimately, is that they have a sort of common goal, like a trajectory that they're attempting to accomplish, like something that is important to them above and beyond this arbitrary identity trait, that unites them. Because like, and you spoke about this at Better, like how you get frustrated with other
Mm-hmm.
people who have the moniker of atheist and are basically, like trampling all over what you see as work that you've been doing, because they're like sullying the name of atheist. But really that name of atheist doesn't necessarily mean much in and of
No.
itself. It
Mhm.
only has this value within a community in so much as that community shares goals, which is why when we see somebody who publicly identifies as an atheist who doesn't represent our values or our goals, we tend to get frustrated because we see ourselves as this sort of like unified mass, because we all have these common experiences,
Mm-hmm.
which is another aspect. So because we have these common experiences, we see each other as compatriots, right? So like you went through this type of thing, you were subjugated as a result of this like common like experience within society, or like you're perceived the same sort of way as I am. So we have a unity there where we should both have a common goal. Like I think that you and I should like both want to be perceived like a human, or both want to not be subjugated by religion and not be subject to a theocracy. Like all of those things are things that we maybe share, but how we enact those goals and whether or not we even have the same goals can be up for question. And sometimes people, when they come in, they go through like this challenging phase where they're trying to figure out whether people share their values and goals. So they can like kind of like upturn the apple cart when they come in, because they are just going through this storming phase where they're trying to figure out, like, is this where I belong? What even am I? I'm reconstructing my entire identity, and that they can cause a mess, because that's a messy thing to go through.
Yeah, and you I've seen so many of us, myself included, you're trying to find your identity, because as an evangelical Christian, your whole identity is wrapped up in that worldview.
Right.
Atheism in and of itself is not a worldview. It's just simply a response to the God claim. So I have to find out, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? Who am I? And that can take some work. And then what we end up, I think what was great about what you said and what you're saying is that we have to find a way to coalesce around the people who share those values and share a similar identity, so that we can find the commonality. If we don't, you can't form an identity around the fact that, well, we don't believe in the same gods.
Right.
That's not enough.
Then what?
Then what? Now what? What do you believe in? What are you about? What do you care
Why does
about?
it matter?
Yeah. And because of that, and this is a little bit of a tidbit of what I'm going to be talking about at NanoCon in Nashville in a couple of weeks at the next conference. But spoiler alert. but like all of you guys are going to be there. But it's like I need to know what I stand for. Who am I? The reason so many people are afraid to use the label atheist is because it has a negative connotation. If you simply explain when you're telling someone, you know what, I'm an atheist, that just simply means I don't believe in one fewer God than you. Other than that, I'm a humanist. I'm a materialist. I believe in this. I believe in that. I stand for this. I value that. And if you take the time to explain that, then it takes a little bit of the sting away from the name atheist.
Yeah.
And it can make it a lot more palatable for the average listener.
And it can encourage more people that share your values and share your goals and recognize themselves in a component of you to stand up and be counted as well.
Exactly. And that's the point. We've got to stand up and speak up.
Exactly.
Because we got a call here I want to take, because I know you're going to want to speak to this. Shannon, I know it's late where you are. I don't want to be respectful of your time. We typically go to an hour and a half, so we're running up close to the end. But this is Philip in Barbados. Want Shannon to explain. Hey, Philip, you're he, him. You're on with Shannon. Real quick, we've got a few minutes. What's your question?
Yes, Shannon, some persons, atheists, people say that theists are mentally disabled. I don't agree with that. Can you explain to the audience why you would not consider a theist being mentally disabled?
Theist, religious people being not mentally ill.
They absolutely aren't. Yeah. Just by default. Like, so I did an entire video that is pinned to the top of my channel that I got a lot of hate for, and I just don't care because it needed to be said with a lot of references. So if you want the more detailed explanation, if what I'm saying here isn't satisfactory to you and you want all the references, go to my channel, watch that video. It's pinned right to the goddamn top. You can't miss it. Go watch it. But the fact of the matter is, just being religious is not a mental illness.
No.
And it being used as a pejorative, which is what happens in these instances when somebody says, yeah, religious people are just, mentally disabled, or religious people are just mentally ill. It's a mental disorder to be a religious person. What you're doing is you're attempting to weaponize the idea of neurodivergence because you see it as a pejorative. You see it as something that is negative. You see those people as people who are not processing information as well as you, because apparently you're superior in how you process information. And let me tell you, if you knew how you process information, there's no such thing as superior. We all suck at it. Some of us just think that we're better. Yeah. Like, so, it irks me to no end for that reason initially, just because it shouldn't be weaponized that way. Like mental health and people who have neurodivergence, like you should not attempt to stand on top of them because you think that you're better than them in any situation. And even if you looked past that, it's just factually inaccurate. It's just not the case. I would see it as a poor epistemology. It's a supported epistemology. It's an epistemology that has external support. It's an epistemology that you can absolutely find support for. Otherwise, people wouldn't, the en masse wouldn't be religious. It's socially supported. It's culturally supported. There's centuries and millennia of books, philosophical books written about how you can rationalize it. It's not irrational to be religious. I think it's wrong, but I'm sure that I have other beliefs that I currently think are rational that are also wrong. And being wrong has never been a mental illness. That's just the human condition. Humans are fucking wrong sometimes. So people should stop doing it. As far as it's just, I hate it. It's not the case.
And I know in psychology they use it's called DMI to identify mental issues.
I didn't hear what you just said. They use what?
A DMI. Is it a DMI that they use
DSM-5
in psychology to identify?
DSM-5 and the ICD-10. It depends. The DSM-5 is like just
Right.
America. North America, really. The ICD-10 is probably the one that I would refer to more because that is the World Health Organization version of that manual. Is the ICD-10. So the DSM-5 is very much influenced specifically by the culture just in North America. The ICD-10 is the World Health Organization version of that manual. And I think that that would probably be one that more people should reference because it takes into account more aspects of cultural diversity and how mental illnesses are viewed in multiple cultures. So it's a bit more comprehensive, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
And I think another side of that I thought of, Shannon, that bothers me is if you attribute something as a mental illness that's really not, it does a great disservice to those who struggle with genuine mental illness. And so that's why it's not okay to call it that when it's not. Yeah. And it's lazy. It's lazy.
It's disparaging to them.
Yeah, it's lazy. So stop it, people.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I'd go so far as to say that, I get irked when I see people say, "Oh, religious people are so stupid." It's like,
no,
I'm sorry. Like, did you immediately become a smarter, better person just because you stopped believing in something?
Yeah,
no,
that's arrogant. That's arrogant.
Incredibly arrogant. Absolutely. So yeah, atheists, stop doing that.
Stop
I
it.
wish they would. God, I wish they would.
But Philip, thank you. That's a great question. Thanks for calling in, buddy.
Okay, thanks.
Good to hear from you, Philip.
Thanks,
Take care, buddy.
Shannon.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. He's a faithful supporter.
Oh.
Let's grab one more call. I know it's late, Shannon. I won't keep you much longer, but I do want to get this one because I want to hear your take on it. Stephen, him in Washington, how to cope with choices you made in life when facing death. Hey, Stephen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hi guys. How are y'all doing?
Doing good. What's your question for Shannon, Genevieve, and myself tonight?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a long backstory, but considering it's already late, I'll make it brief. Basically, I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but I've got a long family history of fairly short-lived men. And I spent a lot of my life working very hard to ensure that my kids and my wife would be able to live comfortably without me. And we've gotten to that point now. And I'm going in for another screening tomorrow. I just kind of was listening into the show and caught myself thinking, like, man, would it have been worthwhile to maybe have been not quite so comfortable after I'm gone to enjoy a little bit more of what I had here? Or you get what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit. Thoughts, Shannon, Genevieve, before I chime in?
I kind of want to hear what Dave has to say for the.
I was
going to give you guys a minute, but I will speak to this. I think it's very close to what I talk about a lot. I think, Stephen, if you follow me at all, I have a terminal disease. If you don't, I do.
That's kind of why I wanted your opinion on it.
Okay, I don't always assume people know that, but I've dealt with this a lot. And if you read my book, Shannon, when you finally get around to it, you'll see that I made lots of bad decisions and bad choices in my life. And so now as I get closer to the end of it and to my death, I do deal with that at times. I think to sum up my attitude about it, I use a quote by Maya Angelou, which simply says, "Do the best you can do until you know better. And then when you know better, do better." And it sounds like a simplistic notion, but you can really put that into practice. And so I don't spend a lot of time on regret. I find regret to be a very costly emotion and not very productive at all. So I genuinely look back at mistakes I made and choices, and a big mistake to me was giving my life to Jesus for 3.5 decades. And I feel like I wasted a lot of that time that could have been more productive and more well spent in terms of things that actually make a difference in this world. But that's done. I can't undo that, and I can't go back and redo it. And so I really just try to focus on the time I have now, the moments that are in front of me, and check myself when I do get lost in nostalgia or regret, because it just isn't productive at all. And you can embrace where you are now, be thankful for where you are now, the people you have in your life right now, and simply do the best you can do with what you have, and gather the people around you that add value to your life, do the things that add value, live the life you want to live. I say this all the time too. No matter what age you are or what condition your health is in, you can always improve, you can always grow, you can always change, you can always learn. And if you don't like the story that's being written about your life, then take the pen back from whoever's writing it and write your own story and finish it the way you want to finish it, and finish well, because we do have that capability within our power.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help?
Yeah, that I like that quote. That's good. I didn't know you wrote a book, so I might have to give that a read through.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing that I've said to people?
Of course.
In the past, when it comes to regret, I think regret robs you of your present because you're mourning a previous present. So
Yes.
you put yourself in a mourning phase for a previous present that you no longer have anymore. And in doing that, you're just perpetuating, like you're creating, because the moment that you're living in, that you're spending time regretting what didn't happen in the past, is a moment that you could be living now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're taking that away from yourself. Like you can use that to inform your future decisions, but don't spend your time living in it, because then 5 years from now, you'll wish that you hadn't spent that time in regret and had spent that time instead living. So give that as a gift to yourself. Just use it to inform your decisions. Don't wallow in it. Don't live in it.
Yeah. Something that I often say is, don't let a bad moment make a bad day. It's so easy. Like if you start your morning off and somebody cuts you off, things are just not going right, you'll just be grumpy and pissed off the rest of the day. And I guess a good way to extend that is exactly that. Like if you just live in this regret, then all you're doing is fucking up the rest of these moments. Exactly like what Shannon said. And another thing that I would add as well is, you brought up potentially feeling regret about sort of this nest that you've put together to take care of your family when you're gone. I was going to say, as somebody who is not dying, but who is the executor of an estate because my father died, I would say don't regret that at all, because that would be lovely. Oh my gosh, if my dad had that foresight, I just think in that regard, you are doing great. And the other thing as well, the other thing too is when I think about these moments with my loved ones that I miss who aren't here anymore, I don't think about the money that they spent on me or experiences. I think about, the words that they said, the free moments. So I think you can keep that nest egg, and as long as you are just absolutely cherishing every minute that you spend with your family, like the smell of the flowers and your cup of coffee in the morning, whatever, I think as long as you truly sit and appreciate those moments and those people, then you'll be fine. It'll be okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My oldest daughter is just kind of at that age where it's like you try to tell them that you were doing what you thought was best at the time, but all you get back is just this anger. And I can hope that one day she'll understand, or that I'll be around long enough to kind of work through it with her. But
write some letters. Write some letters.
I appreciate everything.
That's a good suggestion.
Write some letters to her. Write some letters to her that she can read when you're gone, and maybe you're not going as fast as soon as you think. So hopefully you get some good diagnosis, some good scans, and write some stuff to them that you would want to say to them when you're gone. That's kind of what, I wrote this book as my journey, my story, but also thinking. There's a link to it in the chat. You can also find it on my website. And reach out to me in an email. Let me know how you're doing. But I wrote it to also have something there that my kids and grandkids can look back on and see my story in my own words in ways that I maybe wouldn't have been able to say to them in person. So, I mean, you may not want to write a book, but you may want to. But if not, write some things that they can read when you're gone.
Yeah, I actually used to do these little home videos. There was a time when I was really sick, and and this was before my second daughter was born. But yeah, I might go back and update a few of those, because
that'd be a good idea. Yeah,
I've definitely got a different perspective from back then.
Yeah, we're always growing and changing and becoming a different person. So you're a different person now, and I hope your daughter can see the person you are now, even the person you're becoming, and not hold you to something that was before. That'd be great. But reach out. Let me know how you're doing, Stephen. Stay in touch, okay?
Yeah, will do. Thanks.
Thanks for calling in, buddy. All right. We should let you go, Shannon. It's like 4 a.m. there, wherever you live.
It's 11:41 in Nova Scotia, for the record.
Nova Scotia.
Basically 4 a.m.
Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia.
Oh, Shannon, I knew this is as fun as I thought it would be, and I hate that we have to go, but
I hoped it would be funner, but okay.
She is so disappointed. She's gonna go tell Paul. Paul, don't go on that fucker show. It's awful.
I already texted
Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time, Paul. But no, folks, thank you for staying a little later tonight if you're watching live, and if we don't like to go this long, but it's just too much fun to let you go, Shannon. So thank you again for coming on. It's been a delight, and truly you are one of my favorite people, and so I just want you to know that. So thanks again. I'm okay. She can't help herself. She knows she loves me so much.
I do. I flew to Indiana to see you, you jerk.
That's right, you did.
No one does that on purpose.
Right. No. You don't want to go on purpose. We had a great time, though. But thank you again, Shannon. Good to see you again, Genevieve. And folks, that's our show for tonight. Thank you. Mm-hmm.